Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we celebrate science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I've got Claire and NPS here, and we're actually coming to you from the wonderful comic book store of Alternate Worlds. It's a real place, yes it is, I can take my word for it. So we're going to go straight into it because there's a bit of controversy going around. NPS is going to tell us all about it. NPS, tell us all about it.
Well, it seems that everybody's favourite sparkly vampire has been cast as the new Batman.
What?
Now, look, this is...
Another Batman.
Another
How
Batman
many more Batmans?
series.
More worse than James Bond. There's Batmans everywhere.
I know. This was the series that Ben Affleck was going to do as the character, but they mucked around with it and they rewrote it and they have a new director and who knows what's actually happening with it. It's a new sort of younger looking Batman, and I think Affleck still wants to direct it as well, so still unsure on all the details.
How would Affleck directing the guy playing Batman be saying, if I was Batman, I'd be doing it this way because I wore the Batman? So
He probably would be, but it's a different suit, I'm assuming. Although they're putting in pictures of Pattinson in the Dark Knight suit, which doesn't make any sense at all, so I don't know. But the worst part is the controversy. Everyone's going, oh, he can't be Batman, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's go back and see what happened when they announced that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman. My God, the controversy was out. He's a comedian, he won't be good as Batman, and he's turned out to be one of the best around.
Beetlejuice as Batman. Who would have thought? But it worked.
Mr. Mom.
Indeed, yes.
If you will. So he turned out to be one of the best Batmans around. He also introduced the fact that he drops the voice. He said to Tim Burton, why would you talk to someone on the phone and in your voice as Bruce Wayne and then all of a sudden you're the same as Batman? That's why he dropped the voice to I'm Batman. So you want to talk controversy? That's fine. It's always been the case. George Clooney was controversial. Val Kilmer was controversial. Joel Schumacher as the director was massively controversial. So, but here's a question for you guys. Did you know that some of these other people were possibly going to be cast as Batman over the 89 to 97 years? Let's go with Harrison Ford. Imagine Harrison Ford as Batman.
How would you put the Indiana Jones hat over the ears? That's the bit I can't work out. Yeah, the whip would work though.
Pierce Brosnan. I'm going to run through some of these. Johnny Depp, Keanu Reeves. In recent times, Josh Brolin. Tom Hanks.
Really?
There's a surprising one. Tom Hanks.
So when Batman gets into his car and he finds it's not working, he goes, "Oh, Alfred, we've got a problem."
That's when Robin says, "I'll have what he's having."
Exactly right.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Wow.
Heath Ledger was auditioning for the Batman role rather than the Joker role, but he ended up being the Joker.
Oh, that's interesting.
One for the ladies, Ethan Hawke.
Oh, who?
Ethan Hawke could do it.
Ethan Hawke.
I reckon he could do it.
Back in the day, maybe not so much now, but back in the day. David Duchovny, when he was big from the X-Files, that was covered off. Mel Gibson, Jake Gyllenhaal, and here's a surprising one, Bill Murray. They wanted to bring Bill Murray in to do like a 60s version Batman with Eddie Murphy as Robin, and guess this, David Bowie's the Joker.
Oh wow, that would have been amazing.
That would have been
cool.
Very interesting to say the least. You could have brought in David Bowie as the Joker, but as for Eddie Murphy being Robin, I don't know.
I'm thinking of Bill Murray. He would just look at something and go, you know what? No human being would stack bats like that.
Yeah, and on that
That's a Ghostbusters gag, so
It
there you go.
is.
So there are a lot of people who have been potentials, and look, it all comes down to, as I've said for many, many years, it comes down to the script and the director.
It really
does. It's their vision. If the actor, whoever that is, including Affleck, including Keaton, including any of those guys, has a say in what the role is. But if the script is no good and the direction is no good, it doesn't matter who the actor is, So, but it comes down to the direction and the script. And if the script is good and the direction is good, there won't be a problem, and we'll all be sitting there in a year's time and going, oh my God, he's fantastic, he's like the next Keaton, blah, blah, blah.
Possibly.
So, guys and girls, settle, let the film come out, and then we can judge it, okay? Simple as that.
Need a chill pill, and while you're having that chill pill, we're going to have a break. We'll be back after these messages.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products. So whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
Welcome back to the show. 2019 is a very exciting year because, hey, it's the year that this show started, but it's also an anniversary of a couple of movies, and there's one in particular we're going to be discussing. So, MPS, kick us off.
All right, so as we know, and if you follow a certain Star Wars podcast, you'll know that they're discussing the 20th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 1. However, we're not going to do that here because we have a whole year on the podcast to do that. But we will talk about The Matrix, which has snuck up and turned 20 as well.
Wow.
So I got to say, for the start of things, I didn't like the film when it came out first. I wasn't a massive fan of it. I liked it, it was okay, it wasn't fantastic. But it wasn't until I started filmmaking in 2001 when I was doing the fight choreography for a fan film that I studied the background stuff of the fights and how they did certain things. And it was quite interesting that Wu Ping, who was one of the greatest Chinese fight directors around, second generation fight director if you want to go that far, he gave this thing the guts and the glory of the fight scenes. And they were fight scenes that we hadn't seen before in Western film. Chinese film and all that sort of stuff. They're classic examples, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon with all the wire work and all that sort of stuff. We hadn't really seen that in a modern Western film, and this was one of the first ones to do that. Then I started falling in love with this film. There are so many aspects that are still great today. Most of the production values still stand up. The only thing that really doesn't stand up is the computer tech. Everyone's got slide phones, or if you watch it really carefully, they've all got CRT monitors sitting there. So, and one thing that wouldn't work if you rebooted the film nowadays is there's not a lot of phone booths around. So they needed a phone booth to go everywhere.
Oh, how would you be?
Very good
make
point.
a call and there's like nowhere to go. Yeah, exactly right.
You know?
Any kind of landlines.
Yeah.
Landlines,
There are still
they're
some.
offices and companies and that sort of thing, but very few houses that I know of have a good landline. You know, you wouldn't sort of rock up to your neighbours and go, I need to use your phone. Like, well, haven't you got a mobile? It's like, and if you use the mobile, do you use the 4G network? And if you get stuck in the 3G network, who knows? You know,
Whatever.
so many technologies. So, look, it was a fairly good film, and it spawned two not so great sequels. Okay, so, and the whole idea was the Wachowski brothers, they wanted to do the second two films first, but they didn't have the skills or the filmmaking ability at that stage. They hadn't really done a feature film. So they were told to do, they had one behind them, then they were given The Matrix. They wrote The Matrix, brought it over to Australia, shot it at Fox Studios in Sydney, and had a massive budget because our dollar was terrible at that stage, so they had twice the money that they could use. They brought all over the actors, and if you watch it carefully, you can see a bunch of Aussie actors in all three of those films.
And the locations.
And the locations, if you know Sydney,
A few of them
there
are
are a few of
familiar.
those are pretty good too. So the only part I don't like about the film is when they stick that thing in his belly button, because that just feels like it's going to hurt.
It's going to leave a mark.
It's got to, and when they pull it out again, it's like the scene from Total Recall where he goes, see that thing, stick it up your nose and pull it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think of the film.
At the time, you are right, it was a little bit of controversy, but the production values were outstanding.
Suddenly, long black leather coats were the go, and dark sunglasses. They were very, very, very cool. And some of the photography in particular was really outstanding. I mean, they storyboarded every single shot. And when you look at some of the imagery, and you go, that is really revolutionary, really, really impressive. And of course, bullet time was pioneered, I believe, in The Matrix.
Yeah.
And people just couldn't believe it. An image where, like cameras would just move around, an image while it's standing still was like really, really out there. And a lot of people have sort of copied it since then. But I personally, I loved it purely because of its production design and values. And the story was actually very, very good. Do you realise we're in the Matrix right now? We're just living in some kind of gooey stuff, being fed all this food and stuff. And I think it's actually quite interesting. The bit that really intrigued me the most is actually when Agent Smith is discussing about how previous Matrixes, where they tried to keep it all like utopia, where everybody was happy and wonderful and the world was pleasant, and it didn't work. Whole crops were lost because people need violence.
Well, I don't know that it's violence specifically, but but controversy, so something to push against.
But I don't know, because you look at it and you're thinking they were really implying that the society they created in the Matrix was actually a very, very gentle, peace-loving thing. But he actually says, Agent Smith actually says, people just need to destroy themselves. It's in their nature. And there's actually a message in that, even though you don't realise it at the time. And saying, well, okay, can human beings as like a society exist without violence, war, battles, etc.? And it's just implying that they can't.
Well, you've also got to remember that that's from the point of view of a machine who doesn't necessarily understand human nature.
True, but it was written by a writer who clearly thought underneath all that,
that was
okay.
kind of the way
if
it
you
was.
watch any series, Star Trek, Altered Carbon, like we discussed a few episodes ago, every superhero film, you've got bad and good. You've got to have it. There's that side. There's no real story.
It's conflict. It's not necessarily bad and good. I get a little bit edgy when people start talking about bad and good as if it's black and white, because it's not. And what it is conflict. It's not that you're bad and I'm good. It's that you've got something I want.
Sorry,
or,
yes. I know what you're saying.
You know, it's that kind of conflict.
Yeah, sorry. I misinterpreted when you said conflict. You are right. But ultimately, for a conflict to work, you need aggression. Okay? And this is what I think they were implying in the Matrix as well, because ultimately it's like, well, if we both agree, then there's nothing wrong. But if I say this is black and you say this is white, at some point there has to be some kind of a, well, I'm not going to change, you're not going to change. Suddenly aggression rises and then it goes from there. That's how I interpret it anyway. But either way, I thought it was a very interesting sort of sequence, and it sort of outlines society as we kind of know it. But the thing I couldn't work out is why they called their ship the Nebuchadnezzar. I actually saw that like written down on a game show one time, and there's a lot of letters in Nebuchadnezzar. It doesn't roll off the tongue very easily, so they couldn't just call it the Charlie or the Fred. They had to call it that. So I don't know. Somebody
there is a history to the name, though.
I'm sure there is, but
Well, it's the same as Morpheus. There's name history and all that sort of stuff, and we see that a lot in other films. And I asked Claire before, because she's my book guru.
I'm the book person.
So every time I have an idea for a film or script, I go, "Has this been done?" And she goes, "Yes." So I was asking whether or not this sort of story has been, to the extent of Matrix, not parts or thereof, but has this been done before in a book?
I haven't read anything that is this particular story. There are definitely elements of it out there. Cyberpunk, for example, people go into the net to do things, that sort of stuff. But yeah, to me, one of the things I liked about it was that it seemed really original at the time.
Yes,
it was new.
absolutely.
There was a lot of stuff in there that the technology was sort of still emerging and being developed, and it was kind of one of the things I love the most about science fiction is when it pushes that what we have now, you know, to what's next. You know, what are we going to be able to do with it, and also what are human beings going to choose to do with it. So that's one of the things I loved about it. I mean, you guys are talking about the production values and all that, and I watched this way before I knew anything about production values. To me, it was just a movie, and I loved it, and I loved the story, and I love those fight scenes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really a fight scene kind of person, but in this, they were just so beautifully done. Like, you know, they were violent and they were aggressive and all that sort of stuff, but it was also like a dance, and it was just fantastic.
And that's what Chinese cinema is.
Yeah,
you watch all of those films in Chinese cinema, and they are essentially, in film, it is a dance. It's between the two. You have to make it look natural, and some don't look natural and some do look natural. That's why Wu Ping, who is the fight director, was brought in. The Wachowski brothers were very big fans of Chinese cinema and all that sort of stuff. So your wire work and all this sort of thing. And the 5 or the 4 major fights in there are really wonderfully done. But did you know that Keanu Reeves had neck surgery months before he started training? They trained for 4 months.
Wow.
That's why he doesn't do a lot of kicks in it, because he had neck surgery to fuse 2 vertebrae, and he got the news before they started filming 2 and 3, before they started practicing for 2 and 3, that it didn't work. So he could have actually been paralysed. So, but he went through and pushed and pushed. Now, Keanu sort of sits there and you look and he looks goofy, like in Bill and Ted, and when he sits there in the Matrix, he goes, whoa. But he's a dedicated person to his craft. You know, you can't really deny that. He took 20 takes to do the triple jumping kick onto Morpheus in the dojo scene. He was in pain, he was all this sort of stuff. Then he said, look, let's come back tomorrow. They came back 3 takes, it was done. So he is a perfectionist. He makes looking goofy easy, but that's because he works so hard.
He makes looking goofy look good.
That too. And in the fight scene in the subway, I worked with one of the stunt people that actually got hurt on that. The scene where he gets, Neo gets kicked into the newsstand. They built the newsstand solidly, not to crumble, and just didn't move. And they thought they'd killed him. And it wasn't far from it, basically, because they built too solid a structure for what they were doing. So, yeah, lesson out there for you kiddies, don't build things too good when you're throwing people into them.
Or take the blue pill.
Yeah, you can take the blue
Well, I was
pill
gonna
too.
say-
Why didn't you take the blue pill?
It's a little bit ironic that something so solid was built based around a movie where nothing is even real.
I know.
Yeah.
And a little gag, I think you were going to mention this, but I'm not sure if you remember it, in like Keanu Reeves, you know who we're talking about, appears in the John Wick movies, and of course he has the classic quote from The Matrix, I'll let you say because you love it.
When he's about to walk into that last scene where they're in the lobby and they go, "What do you need?" He goes, "Guns. Lots of guns."
What a classic, absolutely fantastic. And of course in The Matrix, billions of guns turn up. And it's like, well, you can only carry so much. That was a little bit excessive, but geez, it was a good-looking sequence.
In actual fact, in that
was.
scene too, Carrie-Anne Moss, who plays Trinity, got hurt. She did her ankle on one of the
I
on
had
the
heard
wall flippy scene,
Yeah.
and it's like
That
she was.
wall flippy scene was amazing though. Like,
Yeah.
just there was so much in that particular scene. There was just so much going on, and I mean, it's all very well to say there were a lot of guns, but they could have as many as they wanted. They didn't actually have to carry them.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
So it worked.
Actually, Trinity was an excellent character.
She
I'm going to
was.
say, did you find like that's like inspirational for young women, young girls to say, oh wow, she is someone you'd aspire to a degree? What do you think?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, she was still, I think, perhaps not used as much as she could have been, but what she did was amazing. Yeah, and the character, the way it sort of shifted and changed, and the connection between the two of them, those two main characters, worked really well, I thought.
Can you give me your best Mr. Anderson impersonation?
Mr. Anderson. I love doing that.
He was amazing.
Hugo Weaving is a brilliant actor at the best of times, and
he's been a favourite of mine for a long time.
he just does these roles that you wouldn't expect. You know, he's one of these chameleon actors, I like to call them. You know, the Gary Oldmans and those guys who come out of nowhere, and you go, hang on a second, he's really good at what he does, dedicated to his craft as well.
Well, the very first thing I ever saw him in was live on stage, and it was Taming of the Shrew. It was Shakespeare, and he rode on stage on a motorbike.
As you do.
It was amazing.
And he went, Mr. Anderson.
I want to hear you say, you help your landlordie take out her garbage in that voice.
Mr. Anderson, you have two lives. One by day is Thomas Anderson, helps his landlady take out her garbage.
It's her garbage. Garbage. I love it. Very, very cool. Very, very
he's
groovy.
fantastic.
Yes. How can you make a telephone call if you're unable to speak? Oh, just the enunciation is absolutely fantastic.
Hugo, Keanu,
Yes.
if you're out there and you want to come on the show, we
Yes.
would love to have you in here. Do an improvised fight scene for us. I think Keanu might have a bit more
Put some
training
sound
lately
effects
with the John Wick films, but Hugo, I'll give you some tips. You can see how we go.
How good is that? Excellent. So, yes, Matrix is now 20 years old. Anything else you wanted to add in before we sort of wrap it up?
Oh, I think we've covered most of
Yeah.
it. If you haven't seen it for a while, go back and watch it.
Again,
You know,
yeah.
it's quite a decent film. I wouldn't fuss too much about the second or third sequel films
No,
because
I
they sort
agree.
of dropped off a little
yeah.
bit. But the first one is certainly one of those ones that if you haven't seen it in quite some time, go back and watch it again. It was really good.
Absolutely. And if you get lost, just follow the white rabbit. Oh, so it's quote central. Don't you love it? Absolutely fantastic. Well, that actually brings us to the end of the episode. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Click on the bell for all the latest updates and all the other funky stuff that is going on around the place. Next week, we'll be discussing what could potentially be classed as the greatest science fiction movie ever made. So you'll have to tune in for that. In the meantime, though, make sure you stay in the zone. Bye for now.